welcome to the Stockboy Gaming channel where I actually test all the cars before telling you which one's best.
What the dude?
I know it's a strange concept, but I really care about you getting correct results, accurate results, and I wouldn't feel good about doing it any other way. I've really seen some horrible videos about drag times lately, and if you've seen those, you're about to see why. Some of these cars are only separated by thousandths of seconds, so you have to do it accurately, you have to do it consistently. That's what you're going to see here. I feel 100% confident that based on the way I test, these are going to be the fastest cars you see in this game. This is a massive project that took a ton of effort, so if you're watching and you want to see more Stockboy Gaming content in the future, don't forget to subscribe. I'd appreciate it a lot. First off, you'll see we have two number 25 cars. Well, these cars tie down to the thousandth of a second. Technically, the X80 Proto is 2 thousandths of a second faster, but as you'll see here, they are so close. So while the X80 Proto is what we're going to look at going up against the number 24 car, know that the Xeno can really move too. First HSW car we got in this video is the Astrin Custom, and this thing can absolutely fly, especially when you look at it compared to some of these older supercars. You might be surprised to see that it is a couple hundredths of a second faster to the quarter mile than that X80 Proto, which is a good car. It's a fast car. Moving on to a bike, we've got the Nagasaki Shinobi. A couple of cars that have been added really recently to this game, and the Shinobi is pretty quick. You'll notice I'm not leaning. I'll address that a little bit later and show you what it's like for some bikes to lean. So I'm doing that a little differently this time around. I've also got a car doing a wheelie, the car that I think is the fastest wheelie quarter mile car. So you got that to look forward to. But the Shinobi does lose out to the Tesseract. It's an electric car, tons of torque, great off the line, and it just barely beats the Shinobi to the quarter mile, even though the Shinobi gains on it after the 8th mile line by a little bit. And now at 21, it's the Benefactor Krieger. So go ahead if you're one of the Krieger lovers. I'm used to it. Hate me for this, but it's what it is. I mean, I can't do anything differently but show you the results. So Krieger just barely faster than the Tesseract. That is the first 5 cars, and now we're moving into the top 20. So the Krieger just outside the top 20 at 21, taking on the Brioso RA. I will say that if you lean in the Shinobi, it would actually be in the 20 spot, but that's not consistent. This way is extremely consistent, and the Brioso RA is faster than the Krieger in a straight line in these tests, which is absolutely wild. Really neat to see. In order to beat the Brioso RA, you need the Italia Gto, which is in the 19 spot. That's just wild to me. I love how fast these HSW cars are. It's extremely disappointing that they're no longer making them, it seems. But the GTO, 400ths of a second faster than the quarter mile there. And now we've got the ProGen Emirates, which is faster than the Italia Gto. And the Italia Gto, ProGen Emirates, and RSX, if you've seen my last video from 2021, they've shuffled around a bit because things have changed a little and their times are so close. So I've actually had to record these quarter mile times a little bit differently. It gives me some slightly different results, but I also got some faster times for some of these cars. So that's why I'm going to do this every year so you can see how things change year to year. But really, you're only looking at 100th of a second difference to the quarter mile with all 3 of those cars. The Italia RSX going up against the Shitaro, which was really high on the list last year. It's number 16 this time around. Again, not leaning with this bike. You only get about 1/10 of a second to the quarter mile when you lean on these bikes. I'm going to show you that later, like I said. But here, it is a couple hundredths of a second faster than that Italia RSX. Whew, we're moving pretty quick because we got so many cars, but how about that Brioso RA? I bet that was a bit of a shock for some of you. I know it certainly was for me. Now we've got the Devastate, which is not the HSW version. I've got both of them in this video, but the Devastate comes in the 15 spot, just barely faster than the Shitaro. Now, if you're leaning in the Shitaro, it's going to move up a couple places, but the Devastate actually has a pretty decent gap on it here compared to what we've seen so far. The Pariah is insanely fast. It's faster than the Devastate, faster than so many other cars. Even on a track, it doesn't matter the situation. Such a great car, and I'm really surprised they never nerfed it, but it's still much faster than the Devastate. When you consider 1/10 of a second or more in a quarter mile terms, that's pretty good. So that thing can move, and it takes the regular Hakuchu drag to beat it to that quarter mile line. You can see the Hakuchu is faster than the 8th mile. It's going to continue that advantage all the way down, a couple tenths faster than the Pariah. And now the Arbiter GT. Now, I'm not doing a wheelie in the Arbiter GT because it's actually faster to do it this way off of the perfect start. Sometimes wheelies are faster. You'll see that later in this video. The Hakuchu drag destroys it to the 1/8 mile line, but then the Arbiter just turns on the power and actually gets to the 1/4 mile faster, which is awesome. And in order to beat it, the number 3 car from last year, 2021, the Quail Raiden, is what it takes, which is wild how fast that Arbiter is coming off the perfect start. So the Raiden is faster to the 1/4 mile, but not by a whole lot. And it's pretty neat that this thing is a little faster off of the perfect start than in the wheelie. The wheelie, it actually flips over backwards. So if it had wheelie bars, maybe it'd be a little quicker. I'd like to see that added. I know it will never be added, but what can you do? Now we've got our Quail Raiden, Fister Neon. If you saw my video last year, this battle looks familiar to you. These were the number 2 and 3 cars last year. Now the Neon just barely cracks the top 10. 9.87 second 1/4 mile. So now we're finally at the point where we're sub 10s, which is awesome. And I'm going to show you where the Impaler would fall into this list. This isn't really an official result because I can't get it to be as consistent as these other times. These other times I can get consistent down to about the 1,000th of a second when I'm doing these passes on my drag strip. But the Impaler, you're going to see here, if we're counting wheelies, is faster than the Fister Neon, which was the 2nd fastest car last year. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that thing can absolutely move. It's only a couple hundredths of a second, but in drag racing, it matters. So now, another HSW car. You're about to see quite a few of them, but there are some cars that aren't HSW that are ahead, which is pretty cool too. The Neon beats it to the 1/8 mile line, but then the Turismo Classic turns on the power and passes it by the time we get to the 1/4 mile, which is pretty cool. And the Weaponized Ignis. I said no weaponized vehicles if you read the graphic at the beginning, but this one is a little bit different to me. The weapon isn't great, and it's a good HSW car. So I hide the gun, and there we go. The Turismo Classic gets pretty much smoked by the Ignis, which is pretty cool. This was our number 1 in 2021. Let's see how it does against the Weaponized Ignis. Watch this line coming up here. That's the 1/8 mile. It's got a decent gap, but then it kind of falls on its face, and the Ignis just barely can't catch up by the time we get to the 1/4 mile line. You're going to see the same thing here, kind of. The Devastate HSW version is really quick, but the Cyclone's going to beat it to that 1/8 mile line. Then the Devastate just takes off though, and it's got a 1/10 of a second advantage by the time we get to the 1/4. So that's pretty cool. The Devastate is fast, but now we're going to head into the top 5. I know you guys are here to see the fastest of the fast, and that's where we're at right now. The Banshee, faster than the Devastate HSW versions, which is awesome. Also weird because you're talking about sports cars versus supercars again. Rockstar gets it all sorts of funky, but hey, whatever. The Devastate beats it to the 1/8 mile line, but then the Banshee just has tons of power and absolutely takes off to pass it by the time we reach the end of the 1/4. And these two could probably be interchangeable. I love these two cars because they're so similar, and the Banshee was a bit of a sleeper at first. People thought I was crazy for saying that, but it's actually really, really good. And you'll see here, I have to use math, but only a couple thousandths of a second separated them by the time they got to that 1/4 mile line. So kind of neat there. This is the regular Cyclone 2. This is not the HSW Cyclone 2, and look at how fast it is to the 1/8 mile. It just smokes the Karen S95. I mean, it's not even really close. More than a 1/10 of a second. Huge gap there for the regular Cyclone 2. And in fact, it takes my low downforce BR8 with KERS activated at the 1/8 mile line to beat this as the only vehicle that's not HSW in this game that I'm testing this way that can beat that Cyclone 2. So very, very, very fast, the Cyclone 2. Going on to number 2, we have the HSW Hakuchu Drag, and when we're looking at it next to the regular Cyclone 2, it's really quick. But the problem is that Cyclone 2, once you add the HSW upgrade, is really fast. So these things tie to the 1/8 mile, but then the Hakuchu Drag takes off on the way to the 1/4. Well, here you go. Number 1 car in the game as far as acceleration goes. How special works Cyclone 2? This thing is just an absolute monster. Keep your eyes on it because it just goes and goes, and it has a huge advantage compared to the Hakuchu Drag all the way down to the 1/4 mile line. I mean, you're talking half a second, not even close. In true Rockstar fashion, it blows everything out of the water and nothing can touch it. Well, what about leaning, right? That's what we've been saying. I know people are going to say it, so here you go. On the left, Hakuchi drag. I'm in a lean. Let's see. Can it keep up? Somebody said they could. They can't. Not even close. It gives you about 1/10 of a second, maybe 1.5 tenths of a second, but you're not going to beat the Cyclone 2. So here's your list officially based on my testing. Some of those other cars like the Impaler are not on here. Feel free to stop it, record it, check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments too. I'd love to hear from you down there. I dedicate so much time to testing these cars, and these videos with all these cars in it take quite a bit of time. So love to hear from you there. Let me know what you think. And if you enjoyed it, you're not already, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see more of you here. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.